Sometimes in this market, it's hard to know what to believe. Like, what feedback that we're reading online is really the best form of the truth. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, or I mean, I'm sure there are things that I believe that are probably kind of out there, I guess, at some points. But for the most part, like some of the stuff that comes out online, the information isn't necessarily wrong when it comes to Phoenix, in my opinion. Like, I'm not going to shoot it down like I Mr. Know-It-All, but it's hard to see. I kind of get back to this when we talk about numbers, and if you give me any sort of metric, like one of those metrics on our website, I could probably tell you a pretty good story 4 different ways. And each 4 of those different ways is going to support a different argument, because if I'm good enough at it, I should be able to do that, right? And I think that's what a lot of these articles are doing. I saw one specifically. I get a lot of like these news feeds that talk about the real estate market anytime something comes up, kind of real estate market, Phoenix related. So I kind of stay on top of that and make sure that I see what's really happening. But it was a Yahoo article talking about like the areas that they deem are going to collapse. And it was interesting because it said Phoenix. It didn't talk about, the reasons for it were water and the heat. Both of which, of course, are issues to certain extents. The heat is getting hotter. The struggle, though, is that it doesn't talk about the benefits that outweigh the negatives right now, and I think that's something that in these situations where people are calling Phoenix a place that is not a good place long term, I completely disagree, because I'm here, and maybe it's because I'm partial, but I think with all of the manufacturing that's happening here, with all of the development, with all of the growth, Phoenix is where it's at. So let's get into a couple things this week. Had our sales meeting this week. We have 2 showing specialists. What they do, they get people into your rental properties. We have a sales meeting every 2 weeks. I get a gauge from them as to what are they seeing out there, what's the real pulse, not just from the number side, but what are they seeing from tenants. They'll go out and they physically meet the tenants at the properties. This week, they told me something that I didn't quite believe. They told me that the values that they're seeing of our properties look pretty strong, look pretty good, because what they're seeing is that the market seems to be going up a little bit, which I saw more of kind of this flat line. We're seeing this flat line. We're seeing, hey, hold on the rental side. Keep your renewals where they are. I still believe that, by the way. But at the end of the day, they're seeing that our properties are looking pretty good right now, which is awesome, which means that your properties are going to get filled faster. And we're still on this probably little bit of an uptick, or there are people still stretching to try to get those rents that we saw last year, the year before. So I think that's a really good sign. I was really positive and something that I wanted to hear this week. I think with that, we're leaning more towards a market that's favorable towards the owners. Fed mentioned this week that there is a very high probability that September they're going to be lowering the rates, which is great. Positively impacts certain people, negatively impacts the others. I think right now we're at if you look at the average properties on market is relatively flatlined. Demand is pretty down, but it's staying flatlined with this activity because people are still buying. We do have houses under contract. We are still putting houses on the market coming soon and getting full price offers within a couple of days. That market is still here for certain properties. So don't think that it's gone away. It's just, for the most part, you find these properties that are harder to get into. When you think about the financing, if you're able to rent a property that in an apartment complex that's a 2-bedroom and the rents are coming down, and the rents on that place are going to cost now $1,800 a month, let's say. Well, at $1,800 a month, that's a 2-bedroom condo. Similarly, if you're only putting 5% down, that may cost you more than $2,500 a month right now in this market. So it's this balance. What does that look like? And how much, and I mean, $2,500 to buy, right? So Where does it make sense and where does it not? But I think at the end of the day, like, the market looks like it's heading in the right direction. We're in day 2 of this new real estate kind of moratorium that says basically they removed all of the commissions from the MLS. So this usually will take realtors. Realtors are smart when it comes to getting paid, figuring out how that's going to work. So within the next couple of months, there's going to be some lots of trial and error to figuring out how we can then convey what we're paying in commissions to buyer brokers to make sure that they're coming to the properties and making sure that that happens just like we always have. So I'll keep you in the loop, but that's not really going to affect you much. We're taking listings for sale, of course. We're still paying buyer broker fees. I'm not going away from that at all because I do see the value in that. There is tremendous value when it comes to from a listing agent perspective of pushing the price when you've got a buyer's agent that can keep things together on that end and make sure that everyone feels represented. That's a big deal. Cool. One last thing. You might know, you might not. When a tenant renews with Capstone or newer tenants that come on board, we are now, and we've been doing this for a minute, but tenants have to, like, used to be the option of the owner, but as we've seen in this market, we need all of the tenants to have insurance policies. I am a firm believer that that's exceptionally important for many, many different levels. We require that Capstone is named as an additional insured on that because we need to be, because that's the way that the market's gone and that's what we need to be paying attention to. And everything's gotten more expensive. So when things go wrong, we want to make sure that that's covered. So in that thought, we have created, and what we have is when the tenant basically applies and they don't have insurance, if they don't have it by a cutoff date, on move-in, they basically have to pay a $15, it's basically $15 a month, and they get automatically signed up for it's a very limited policy, but it is a policy that protects the landlords, doesn't protect the tenants. It doesn't include any coverage for their internal, any sort of personal property or anything like that. That's what they have to get on their own, which is what we are asking them to do. And it almost pushes them to making the decision to get a better policy on their own and then provide us a copy of it, which I love it. I think it's fantastic. And I think it's something that will protect our owners. It doesn't protect, it's not a super comprehensive policy, but it's automated. It makes everything simple. And again, it leans more into just, correcting the action, making sure that the tenants get the policies that they're supposed to. And that will protect them, it will protect you, that will protect the property and make sure that the experience is what we expect it to be. Cool. I hope that's helpful. Yeah, lots of stuff happening this week. This was one of those weeks that so many things happened, and there's so much coming at us from so many different angles. All good. I mean, I don't want to say all good things because it's not all good things, but for the most part, I look at these opportunities that are changing the market as opportunities, as ways to level up and figure these things out. I love being the one who has to figure it out. I love that we are the company that can stay ahead of these things. I joke with the team that outside of these walls is an entirely different world, right? And it is. We're relatively insulated here because we're thinking ahead of things. We're doing our best to stay ahead of the curve. We're doing our best to not be so worried about what's happening with the market that we can't control because we're in here focusing on the things that we can. So thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you. And I look forward to giving you more feedback next week. See ya.